It was a couple of weeks into the summer, right after I graduated high school, and it was my first real taste of freedom without the looming responsibilities of work or school. Everyone knows that the beginning of summer is always the best time of the year, and I was definitely living my best life. In Wyoming, there is a local tradition for new graduates where you head out into the plateaus to go rock climbing. I'm not sure if it's a tradition anywhere else, but I like to think it is. It's a rite of passage, a celebration of newfound freedom, and doing something that takes a bit of skill and a lot of courage. My friends and I had been talking about it for weeks, and finally, we decided to make it happen. It was me, Alexandra, Nick, and Jack. We've been friends since middle school, and Alex was the only one with a reliable car, a Jeep, that she absolutely adored and always jumped at any excuse to take off-roading. She also didn't drink, so she became our designated driver, which worked out perfectly for the rest of us who planned to bring a few beers to celebrate once we reached the top of the plateau. Our plan was simple. We'd head to the Flaming Gorge lookout first, take in the view, and then explore the surrounding plateau areas for a good climbing spot. The lookout was breathtaking, one of those views that made me appreciate living in Wyoming. We spent about an hour there, taking pictures and soaking in the scenery. After that, we started heading back toward Route 80, keeping an eye out for potential climbing spots. As we were driving along Highway 141, we spotted this perfect rock formation off to the side of the road. It wasn't too technical but challenging enough to be worth the effort. Alex pulled the Jeep into a small gravel lot, and we grabbed our gear and packed our backpacks with drinks. The climb was only about 15 minutes, a steady scramble up the rock face, with enough handholds and footholds to make it manageable. Alex went first, being the most experienced climber among us, followed by me, Nick, and Jack bringing up the rear. The view from the top was totally worth it. You could see for miles, just endless stretches of Wyoming wilderness. We cracked open our beers and relaxed, talking about other friends from school and reminiscing about the good old days. I was just staring into space, taking in the scenery, when I noticed a red pickup truck speeding down the highway. At first, it seemed like any other vehicle passing by, but then it screeched to a halt, right after it passed Alex's Jeep. To our surprise, the truck actually started reversing, right there in the middle of the highway. It backed up until it could turn into the small lot we had parked in. We all grew quiet, watching as a man got out of the truck. From our distance, he looked like a man in his 50s, tall and broad, but we couldn't make out any other details. At first, we thought maybe he was just another person stopping to hike or climb, but then he started walking around Alex's Jeep, peering into the windows, trying the door handles, and generally inspecting the car in a way that didn't seem quite right. That's when Nick yelled, "Hey!" from the top of the plateau to let the man know that the car wasn't unattended. We all watched as the man jumped, clearly startled, and began looking around, trying to figure out where the voice had come from. He eventually spotted us from the top of the plateau and waved. We thought that would be the end of it, that he'd probably get back into his truck and leave. But to our surprise, he didn't. He kept messing around with Alex's car. In response, Jack yelled that we were armed, which, in hindsight, was a bad move. We didn't have any weapons with us. I think Jack just thought it might scare the guy off. Instead, the man looked up at us and shouted something that made my heart stop. "Me too, kiddo," he yelled, holding something up in the air. I couldn't make it out from this distance, but I assumed it was a gun. The next few minutes unfolded like a nightmare. The man began slamming his shoulder and elbow into the Jeep's windows, clearly trying to break in. We could hear the impact even from where we were sitting. Alex, furious now, started screaming at him to stop. We all joined in, yelling and making as much noise as possible, while scrambling down the plateau as fast as we could. By the time we heard the sound of glass shattering, we had reached the bottom and were sprinting across the lot toward the Jeep. The man saw us coming and shouted for us to stop, pointing what was definitely a gun directly at us. We froze in fear, raising our hands. He demanded that we throw our phones and wallets on the ground, which we did without hesitation. Then he ordered us to walk backward while he collected our things, keeping the gun trained on us the whole time. When I got a good look at his face, he seemed like just another older white guy, maybe in his 50s, with a scraggly beard and weathered features. Nothing about him stood out, which made me frustrated, because I knew it would be impossible to identify him later. After taking everything we had, he pulled out a knife and punctured one of Alex's tires. Then, Without another word, he walked back to his pickup truck, one that didn't have any license plates, and drove off. We were all in shock, and Alex was especially livid, understandably so. Not only had the man robbed us and damaged her car, but he'd also taken our phones, leaving us with no way to call for help or even chase him down. Jack and I changed the tire as quickly as possible, but we all knew there was no way we could make up for the lost time. Once we were back on the road, Alex drove as fast as she could in the direction the truck had gone, but it was long gone. We eventually gave up and headed back to town. Nick knew the way, so we just went home and figured we'd deal with it later. Once we got to Alex's house, we used her mom's phone to call the police. We gave them a description of the man and the truck, but with no license plates or any other identifying information, they couldn't do much. We never heard back from the police. As far as I know, the guy was never caught, and it completely ruined what should have been an unforgettable summer day. For months afterward, none of us felt safe going to remote areas like that. I know I didn't.